and welcome to the Cybercrime Academy video podcast. My name's Amara and today I'm speaking to Joel from Age UK, who's going to tell us a little bit about Age UK's work supporting older people who fall victim to online scams. How does Age UK support older people who are victims of fraud?
Age UK is primarily an information advice organisation. So what we do is we deliver information advice to our clients for our network of 130 local charities around England. We all share the same information advice resources. And so Age UK has a number of those to kind of prevent fraud, scams, cybercrime, keep people safe when they're online. So that could be on our website. We have lots and lots of information guides available on our website. We have printable resources as well. Alongside this, we have a national advice line. So that's free to ring up 365 days of the year. People can get advice about scams or maybe about computer safety. They can even get advice directly on the phone, or they'll be signposted to local sources of support. Alongside this, Age UK's around the country have also run a number of scams prevention and victim support programs. So these will be things like awareness raising group events. So give representatives from the local police, from the local bank maybe, training standards. Just different agencies are responsible for kind of combating scams in the local area. And alongside this, the more targeted work with either people they think are vulnerable to scams or those they know have been a victim and they're trying to reduce the impact of it on them.
People should be aware of the circumstances that may have led an older person to become a victim of online fraud. What are some of those circumstances? Are there common things that you see that lead this to happen to someone?
Sure. I mean, just to say, all of us are potentially vulnerable to scams. It's not a specific thing to older people, and older people themselves aren't the age group most likely to be a victim. It's just they may be more vulnerable than other age groups, and there may be a greater risk of things going wrong and greater harm if they do become a victim just because of circumstances in their own life. So things that may lead people being more vulnerable to scams are things like loneliness and social isolation. We know that millions of older people often go, a week or two or longer without speaking to anyone. People have less links into the community. And the reasons for that loneliness and social isolation can be because of health reasons, disability reasons. Maybe they find it really hard to get out. Maybe they're struggling with their mental health, or maybe they've got the early signs of dementia or cognitive changes and mental capacity issues, which means they struggle with decision making. Alongside this, things like low digital skills. So we know that lots of older people are getting online, but equally a lot are not so used to it. And if they are going online, it's the things maybe like staying in touch with friends and family, and not necessarily online banking and being aware of the kind of different threats that are out there online. So these are the circumstances that can make us more vulnerable to scams. And that's why Age UK, for its network of local charities, helps address all of these issues and really tries to get to the heart of why an older person might be more vulnerable. So they'll work with local health services to deliver targeted support that can help get people better. They will do kind of lunch clubs to help reduce social isolation and make people more in touch with local older people in their community and volunteers. They also offer digital classes so people can really upskill themselves. So they're going online and so they can navigate the online world a lot more safely.
Loneliness is a big factor in making people more vulnerable. So has the coronavirus pandemic and lockdown, has that influenced this a lot and changed the kinds of online scams that have been targeting older generations?
Definitely. So in the kind of early days, even before lockdown, so around this sort of time, February 2020, we started hearing about lots of reports of COVID-linked fraud, and this often had to do with fake information linked to sources of support. So it would be things like from the WHO, from the CDC in America, from the NHS, saying, click on here to find out more about how coronavirus may affect you and what impact it may have on your life. As we got into lockdown, we started seeing lots of reports of fake PPE listings. So those would be on online auction sites or online websites. These items were in high demand at that point. Everyone wanted to get hold of masks, hand sanitizer, could be things like toilet roll even. So people see a kind of, too good to be true offer to get hold of these. They buy it, the items never materialize. That was the majority of coronavirus linked fraud. As the pandemic and lockdown extended into last year, we saw reports of fake offers of financial support. So when the furlough scheme rolled out, how people could access that and offer, offers of support from HMRC. So people would receive an email, they'd receive a text, maybe even a call, they'd be directed to follow a link, provide personal information, provide banking information, so they could then feel that they could get this financial support, but that would never materialize. Heartbreakingly, we also saw fake COVID testers going around door to door to people trying to trying to get money basically for offering coronavirus testing. And even more heartbreakingly, recently we've seen examples of COVID-linked vaccine scams. So that will either be people being directed to fill in an online form, asking for personal information, banking information so they can pay for a vaccine, or we've even had one or two examples of people coming door to door, offering a fake vaccine and then asking for payment off the back of that. So it's been really varied. Scammers are very innovative and they're very good at adapting to the news cycle of what's going on in the world. But we've been heartened by the fact that there's been some great kind of information, advice, resources out there for older people. And we obviously know that lots more older people will be going online during lockdown, as all of us are. And so that means their capacity to be targeted by criminals online, it can be heightened, but hopefully with the right resources in place to support them, they're less likely to become a victim.
What is the contingent reimbursement model, and do you think it goes far enough?
So in 2019, the banks, alongside consumer organisations and other players in the finance sector, they got together and they agreed a voluntary code which would better refund victims of fraud. So at the moment, if someone takes money out of your account, it's called a card not present fraud, you're automatically entitled to that if you've not authorised that transaction. Where the banks weren't previously liable is if you authorise a transaction to a fraudster with a different belief in what the purpose of that transaction was for. So the example I'd give is, say, for instance, you're called up by your bank, they say your account's been compromised, transfer money to a safe account. It turns out that person was then a fraudster, you authorise that transaction, the bank is therefore not strictly liable for you to refund that money. We obviously know how damaging this can be and how hundreds of millions of pounds are being lost to what this type of fraud is called authorised push payment fraud every year, with fraudsters, like in that example, using really convincing, tricky social engineering effectively to kind of convince people to transferring money. So we knew, the banks and others knew this was a massive problem. So they agreed this code called the contingent reimbursement model, or the CRM code, to better refund victims. And it's a great start. It's refunded on average about 50% or so of victims since it first came in. But we still believe there's a lot more to do. And we still believe that reimbursement rate, about 50% of people that are identified to the banks, is still too low, and that number needs to come much higher. We also want to see the banks have a bit more transparency about the way they're doing this, because it's all a little bit kind of behind closed doors. It's not necessarily a transparent process in determining who gets refunded and who's not. And we'd like to see them make better account of who's vulnerable and the circumstances that may led someone to become a victim in the first place, take more into account of that into the decisions about who's being refunded and not. Ultimately, we may need new laws to come in to make this code mandatory. Not all banks have signed up to this voluntary agreement, so some people are excluded depending on who their bank or building society is. And so it may be right in the future for the government to review this and say, we need to actually put this in law and make it mandatory for banks to refund victims of authorised push payment fraud.
There's quite a big opportunity for banks to be able to help protect people. Which other organisations and actors do you think you'd like to see more help from?
So much of fraud occurs online these days, and so many times online platforms are partly responsible for some of the kind of criminal content that's appearing on their platforms. So the government have recently announced the Online Safety Bill, and this is supposed to protect all of us, the public, against online threats. So it's tending to focus on things like abuse, extremism, bullying. A number of organisations, including Age UK, believe that the list of harms covered by the legislation should also cover economic harms, so things like fraud and scams, as so much fraud effectively starts online, the victims are online, the impacts can be massive. And the methodology that criminals use is very similar to abusers and extremists in terms of effectively grooming people. People are effectively groomed online by romance fraudsters for a number of months. And we believe that, online platforms, social media platforms should be doing more to prevent fake accounts and fraudulent accounts from and profiles from operating on their service, and also doing more to proactively remove scam ads on their site. They often have reporting tools in place, but those are only useful after the fact. We want to see more proactive work in stopping harmful content appearing on their platform.
Thank you for watching this Cybercrime Academy video podcast. Joel mentioned quite a few important resources which will be linked with this video, but Age UK's website is ageuk.org.uk. And if you're interested in finding out more about cybercrime in general, please do have a look around on our social media and also our website. Thank you.